So I know last week when we were talking, I was telling you my story about my Fitbit dying
Yeah.
and upgrading to an Apple Watch. So I bought it with and applied with for an Apple Card to get that because I know you had told me about the experience with
Yeah.
getting that. So I applied for it. The plan to pay it off right away, but just to go through it. And it's cool. It arrived this week, and you're right. Like you want to talk about like the experience of it. The application for it was seamless
Hmm.
in checkout, and then ordering the card and the way it arrived and the way they have it packaged and everything. It's like they've got the entire experience down
Yeah.
pat
It's
when
super
it comes
cool.
to the product, not just using it, but the actual like unboxing of it.
Yeah. It's yeah, I mean it's awesome. I'm glad you did that.
Yeah, yeah, it was a cool experience, and I was showing Suzanne. I was like, the card, like it's titanium. It's
Yeah.
not just plastic.
No,
And
it's
she's like, "Is
metal.
this a real credit card you use elsewhere?" I'm like, "Yeah, it is. Believe it or not, it's through Goldman Sachs, so
Yeah.
it's like a credit card I could use elsewhere."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. I don't know that I've ever tried using it. I mean, I use it in through the phone. I don't know
Yeah,
that I've ever tried using the physical. It'd probably be kind of maybe I don't know. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna go to a restaurant like with some friends. I'm like, I got it, and like slap the metal
slap
card
it down. You hear the
down.
little
Like,
ting.
ding. Yeah, yeah, cool,
Yeah,
cool, cool.
yeah. So and I bring that up because let's just dive right into our topic today. I kind of bring that up a bit to tee up our conversation. Last week we talked a bit the sales process and for those running analytics organizations and those directors, those VPs running those teams, like getting bombarded with sales calls and kind of knowing when to ask why and maybe even when to say no. So I kind of want to tease that out a little bit more and talk about one of the tactics that comes with especially in the analytics and martech space, the sales experience. So we're just talking about like a fine-tuned experience with getting the Apple Card and even just everything down to the packaging and the way it's delivered and everything. I want to talk about fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or commonly known as FUD.
Yeah.
It's a common sales tactic, and I want to ask the question like, how can you see through the FUD and even the fear porn when it comes to technology sales to see what is truly going on? Because I mean, that is all there to kind of cloud your judgment, um, and we know that decisions made out of fear are often drastic and they're wrong. And Martech Sales knows how to tap into the fear of opportunity cost because that's ultimately what it is you're going to miss out on this. You're going to be the last one to take advantage of this. You're going to be behind all of your competitors. Um, you know, I guess yeah. Let's just start there. I've got some other questions, but instead of kind of diluting the initial thing, like how can an organization see through the fear, uncertainty, and doubt to actually see like what do they need and what is actually going on? How not to fall prey to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step is just recognizing that it's a thing. I think a lot of organizations don't, I think fundamentally they may realize that this is a tactic and a thing, but when it's happening to them, they don't realize it's happening. And so I think the first step is admitting that we are probably going to be attacked by vendors that are going to use FUD as a tactic, and we need to have a strategy in place for how to deal with it. So I think admitting that this is a challenge has to be the first step. And then once we've done that, we need clarity on what we're trying to do and solve as an organization. I think a lot of these martech vendors, sales and marketing teams are really, really good at what they do because they're able to use the fact that companies don't have. The Amazon guys are just kill me sometimes. I've got this little recirculating stream in my front yard. It's got a water pump and it moves the water up and down. It's got rocks, and I guess from the road it might look like a rock path, but they think it's a literal path to my front door, and I see them struggle trying to walk up this thing. I'm like, guys, there's like literally a sidewalk on the other side. Anyway, you're on mute, but I find it funny.
Yeah, I was just saying the driveway's over there.
Yeah, it's like literally like a few feet over. You can have a nice smooth walk to my door. You don't have to try to traverse this little stream bed. I guess I should just turn the water on, and that would probably give it away. Anyway, I think that vendors in the martech space definitely know how to take advantage of the fact that lots of companies struggle with knowing what they're trying to do, and so when that's the case, every new gadget or tool seems like a solution to a problem that you might have. But and it's like, I think that's like that with most things in life. If you don't really know what you're solving for, you kind of become the victim of like things that look cool, or the FUD factor, like you're missing out, your friends have it. I think about it when I first started buying gear for my bass. It's like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to play the bass. I was trying to figure it out. And every time I walked in the store and I saw all these pedals and all this stuff, I'm like, well, I got to have all that. I'm like, but I didn't know what I was trying to solve for. So it was really meaningless and money not well spent. So I think it's a huge part of it. Once we've accepted that we're going to be attacked from a sales and marketing perspective with FUD tactics, once we know that, we can address it very easily by knowing clearly what we're trying to solve for. Because there will be times when either some marketing content or a salesperson resonates with a problem that you have and you're trying to solve for, and you're like, oh, this might be a fit or a solution for what we're trying to do. But if we don't know what we're trying to do, we are going to be victim to having the junk drawer full of gadgets of things that we never use. I think we've all done this in the kitchen at some point in time. Like, go through, probably you saw this when you were going through your move and going through your kitchen. It's like, when did we buy this thing to like shred potatoes differently than like, just using a box shredder?
Funny enough, you should bring that up. Yesterday, Suzanne was going through a couple boxes of stuff that we just threw together toward the end. It was just like shit from the kitchen, stuff from the basement, and she was going through the box with all the drunk drawer stuff on it, and she brought me a deck of playing cards that I got at a conference from a vendor. And she's like, "Do you need these?" I'm like, "No, give it." I don't even know why they were in there, but they apparently were in our drunk drawer.
I think I have a deck of playing cards from a vendor in my backpack. I should pull it out and see if it's the same one.
Yeah, show me later, and I'll be able to tell you.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, but we do that, right? And so for us, buying kitchen gadgets that may be $20, $100 is one thing, but buying $300,000 software is a whole other thing that comes with a lot of needed support. And this is only going to get worse. I don't know when we get to some sort of critical mass where this thing implodes in on itself. But we've talked about the martech slide in several of our past episodes. Jen talked about it in her presentation. I showed it in a talk that I gave at the DHL Analytics Summit. That slide is only gaining momentum. It's not slowing down. And we kind of reached this tipping point where more products create more products because they create new ecosystems, they create more competitors, they create people. It's like, oh, I can do this slightly differently. And so that martech slide isn't going to get smaller. It's going to continue to exponentially expand because these things are just creating more markets and more opportunities, which means as someone sitting in a position to buy martech solutions, our inboxes, our phones, our direct messages on LinkedIn are going to continually to get even more flooded by people using FUD saying, you need all this stuff, otherwise you're not going to be successful in your role.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting, and I think yes, that slide is ever growing, and that is picking up speed. But to the flip side of that, where you're talking about this whole thing imploding, I think you're starting to see some of the early signs of that happening. Because while there are clients that I see falling prey to this, even with recommendations to slow down and be careful, I am starting to see other clients. I'm starting to see even folks I know in the space that necessarily aren't clients of ours at the moment that are starting to pump the brakes on sales and starting to ask questions. And are starting to ask some important ones like, what is the ROI on this? So there's one particular martech tool that I'm not going to name, but they have an army of agencies that are incredibly aggressive when it comes to sales. And we've talked several episodes ago about one of the dirty little secrets of martech agencies is the preferred partner and the certified partners. They're nothing more than an outsourced sales force. Um, and
And
this
it
one particular
works.
vendor, they're what's that? It
And
works,
it works.
but the
Maybe
problem
probably
is
not for the
that
client though.
but what I'm starting to see is like those agencies that are pushing for this. I'm starting to see people pushing back because they use the tactics of, and I've seen it. I've seen it in emails. I've heard it on calls. With this particular product that if you don't get on board, you're going to be the last.
Yeah.
You're the last client in this vertical at this size who hasn't bought onto this yet. Like that fear of missing out, the fear of being left behind to competitors. They're using that, and again, like this particular agency keeps going in trying different doors. We've tried this and haven't been able to get there. Or they finally they've come out and said like, hey, can you help us with this? We need to do this, and they used the vendor tagline. And finally, I saw someone say, but what are they asking again, what are the integration processes? And they said, well, if you use the Adobe Experience Platform and launch server side, it costs you nothing. And she's like, well, we don't have that right now. We've looked into it. This is the cost to upgrade. We don't have a need to upgrade right now aside from this. Are you saying if we were to upgrade, pay that cost, the program that you manage would make up that cost? And what do you think the response was?
I don't even want to guess.
Nothing. They didn't respond at all. They went quiet again because
Oh.
when this particular client pushed back and said like gave hard numbers, it is a 20% increase on our contract to get this tool that you say you need it. We have no other need for it right now other than this. Are you going to be able to make up this dollar difference?
And they ghosted him.
Yep. The minute
Well,
you kind of came at them with some hard numbers.
Well, and that's a good, so you kind of started the episode with, how do we address this or not getting taken advantage by these companies that use FUD. You bring up a really, really important question that we should be asking is, does this vendor care about our long-term success as a company? And a lot of these agencies that and vendors that use FUD, it's a really easy answer that they don't. And the one example you bring up couldn't be any more clear. And I don't know if we were thinking about the same agency, but I've seen this many, many times where they'll try every door, every team in the company until they can get a yes. But they do it by sabotaging the other teams. They're basically killing their host just to make a sale. And they don't care, right? I've seen them go in and say, oh, your analytics team is shit. They don't know what they're talking about. They create this and they're talking to marketing. So now marketing's like, oh, maybe my analytics team isn't great. And they create this huge disconnect. And sow all these seeds of discontent as they're pushing their FUD. And they get the sale, which means they get their commission. But long term, they've done a lot of maybe irreparable damage to companies. And so that's the question we should be asking ourselves, especially if we feel like we're being presented with FUD tactics. Does this vendor care about our long-term viability and success of a company? And if they're pushing fear, especially if they're going in and they're attacking other organizations within our company and pitting them against each other, it should be very clear that they don't care about your long-term success. And if that's true, it should be an easy no. We're not interested.
Yeah, I haven't seen that specifically where they attack the teams, but they knock on every door. And it's been we've been trying to find an answer to this. We hear like it's more of buttering up. We hear you might be the one, and then again just the boilerplate reasons as to why to do it.
And that's just as toxic. And I'm sure you've seen it in companies that you've worked with where they came to the analytics team said no. So then they go to the marketing team and the marketing team says, oh, okay, yes. And all of a sudden, whether they're pitting the teams against each other or not, that is absolutely what they're doing because The analytics team has a vision, has a plan, and now all of a sudden the marketing team shows up and said, "Oh, by the way, here's our analytics architect and implementer. You have to work with them." We're like, "What the hell's going on here?" It creates a lot of problems. Again, whether they're pitting teams against each other or they're knocking on a lot of doors, they're creating discontent within organizations, and they do not care about you. They are just trying to make a sell to hit their numbers this quarter.
Well, it's funny enough with this particular client, with this particular partner. I've had a great deal of time with this particular client, and I've built up a good enough relationship where I feel like I can be brutally honest. And I've gone to a few folks there, and I'm saying like, I'm trying not to start a turf war. I'm trying not to start a pissing contest. These are questions you need to ask though when they come at you with these kinds of things, when they come at you with this race. Because in the 15 years I've been a part of, worked in analytics, I've always seen there's always this race because there's always some kind of impending doom. This is going away, that's going away. And yes, adjustments need to be made. Yes, changes have been made. Like GDPR was definitely a big thing to be concerned about and to address, but it wasn't the end of the world. And right now, what they're trying to capitalize on is yes, there you need to be aware of it. Yes, you need to make adjustments, but it is not the end of the world as they paint it. And my advice is like, don't fall for this. We need to do this today. It needs to get done right away. Again, ask them, how does this benefit the program? And then, what does this ultimately do for us? And don't take the vague response of it's just future proofing or it's just to get ahead.
Yeah, and kind of tying this back to how you kicked off the episode with the Apple Card example, it's unfortunate that agencies and vendors use the FUD approach. Um, I think there are times where there is some doubt and uncertainty that needs to be addressed, but using that to create fear is not the answer. I think it's a lazy way of doing sales and marketing, and it's unfortunate because it's not necessary. I get why they're doing it. Again, going back to that marketing landscape slide, it's a noisy, crowded marketplace. We have to stand out. And so, how do we do it? Well, we can create a lot of FUD, and that definitely helps draw attention and helps us stand out. Or we can create incredibly positive and meaningful experiences and make this something really enjoyable. So much so that we're talking about it on podcasts and telling our friends that they should do that. Isn't that also a way to stand out? I think because most people are just going to go through and do the average, right? Like getting a credit card from random bank X. It's like, okay, they didn't. It's not horrible. They're not using FUD. It's just an average experience. Very few are going to take the Apple approach to sending you a credit card. And the same is true in the martech space. Most people are just going to go through the motions. You're going to have this one set that is very loud and obnoxious using FUD, and then you're going to have this smaller set of people who are like, we don't need to do that because we're going to create really positive experiences, and that's why people want to buy from us. And from a FUD perspective, you can switch this upside down and like, yeah, there's a lot of education that needs to be had in the martech space. But rather than using that gap in understanding to create fear, what if we truly wanted to help educate our prospects, the companies we're working with, the marketplace, and use that as a differentiator for people? I mean, there's so much opportunity to do that, but yet people aren't willing to play the long game, which comes with, helping educate and raise the water for everybody. They don't want to play the long game because I have to hit my quota this quarter, so I'm just going to use the fact that there's a gap in understanding to create even more fear and uncertainty so someone will buy from me. But I don't really give a shit if they use it or if it matters to them. And I know I'm going to get attacked and people say, well, I'm a salesperson and I don't. Okay, great. Yeah, I get it. But by and large, most salespeople in the martech space are lazy. They use these techniques, which I think are toxic and unnecessary. And it's unnecessary because they have so many better options that benefit all of us in the long run, and they get theirs too. But you have to see it as a long game and not just, I'm going to get mine and get out. which I think a lot of salespeople in the martech space look at it as. Like, I don't care. I'm gonna get mine, get out, bounce to another vendor, get mine, get out, bounce around. I don't care. It's just about me.
Yeah. And I also feel at times like this kind of sales tactic actually prevents organizations or seriously hinders them from solving problems that are actually people problems. It's just, replace it with just add another tool and the problem's going to be solved, when adding another tool actually makes it worse because you don't have the right people or you don't have
You don't
enough
have the right
people.
tool. You don't have the people. You don't have
Yeah,
you don't have the framework for how to use it. It amplifies your existing problems rather than fixing them.
exactly. And that's where I see like this tactic causing people to rush, the fear that they're not going to get what they need, instead of actually taking the time to slow down and actually say, like, ask the questions like, does this really solve our problem? What is our problem? Do we even know what the problem is? Are we are we creating a problem because we have a solution? Like, doing it backwards.
What what do you think of actually calling that out that this is happening? Do you think that that would be impactful in these situations? I think about it because, like, just the other day, I had a scammer hit my phone on text, and I'm like, I sent him a GIF, or I'm gonna have to pull. I don't know. I can't remember what GIF I sent him, but it was something like, "None of this is real life because you're a scammer" or something. And they're like, "How? Why would you say that?" I'm like, "Come on, well, I'm not dumb. I can see through your tactics." And they, of course, went quiet and went away. What if we started doing that in the martech space? Like, look, I get what you're doing. Like, you're using these FUD tactics on me, and it's not going to work. Now, do you want to come back and try again? It's kind of the approach that I've taken with the cold sales emails. Like, look, I get what you're doing. It's not going to work for you, bud. Here's a link if you want some info on what will work. And again, most of them go away and never come back. But it's weeding out the ones that clearly don't care about solving a problem for me, right? They're just trying to hit their performance metrics. What if we started
Yeah.
calling it out?
I think we're going to have to start doing that, because where I was going with that client example a couple minutes ago, I kind of started down a path and then kind of went down like a crazy path. Where I was going with that is I see organizations starting to ask those kind of questions, which is only going to amplify the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, because we've talked so many times coming out of the pandemic. Analytics organizations are not rebounding when it comes to headcount, when it comes to budgets. They're being asked to do more with less people. So they either I'm starting to actually see people starting to ask those questions. So I think we need to amplify it, like, and make people aware that this is a typical sales tactic. And whenever someone is pushing you to make a rush decision, that's when you should actually stop and not do anything, and
Yeah.
actually try to call it out. Like, is this really a a problem that needs to be solved today? Is this even really a problem? And again, like, I'm going to say it. I've said it multiple times. I feel like I've seen this rodeo before with the so-called cookieless future. Are
Mm-hmm.
cookies changing? Yes. Are there things that we need to be aware of and make adjustments for? Yes. But are cookies going away tomorrow? I'm going to say no. They're going to exist. They're going to have to exist in one form or another. So all of these vendors out there that are praying like cookies are going away, you need to upgrade to this new platform now, or you're going to miss out. They're trying to make you make a rush decision. Where if you
Yeah.
actually kind of sat back and saw that, like, okay, I don't need to make this decision today. I can actually probably sit on it for the next 6 months and just think about it.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point that I think is worth repeating. You talked about analytics teams aren't rebounding. All the other teams are rebounding. And
Yes.
I don't know if you've noticed it, but all of the other teams surrounding analytics that also got hit hard during the pandemic are now rebuilding, but analytics isn't. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
different topic, but because of the fact that that's a known fact, these analytics teams were hit hard and they're not going to be rebuilt anytime soon. Adding more overhead and things to try to take care of is only going to make your job more difficult as an analytics leader.
Yeah.
It is now time, and we've talked about, we had this whole series on sustainability and simplifying. Now is the time to simplify your stack. Like, you simply aren't going to have the people to run all of these tools you're buying, and ultimately you're going to end in failure in your role. It would be much better to simplify way down and say we don't have the people, the energy, the headspace to do all this stuff. We're going to simplify down to a few things, and those few things we're going to do really well. I guarantee you that's going to have a massive positive impact, not only on the company, but your individual roles within the company.
Yeah. So, in regard to that, like even this week, we internally been spending time crafting a solution for a client, where they're experiencing this, where the organization overall was hit hard by the pandemic, and entire teams got nuked. Things were put on hold, and we know how that goes. But now that we're past that, and their industry is booming again, all of their other teams have seen increase in headcount. All of those teams have seen increase in budget for all of these new projects. The analytics team has not. So the problem that appears on the surface is how do we get, how do we handle this queue of work? How can we um, get it, get more done? And it's the answer is you can't in the current situation. You need headcount on your team, and trying to just reorganize the queue where, well, let's just put our heads down and try to get through this next 2 weeks of this project. It continues to mask the problem. So our time internally has been, how do we take this to the client and say, here's your real problem and here's how you solve for it.
Yeah, and again, kind of speaking on this FUD factor of buying more tools, I feel for these analytics teams. I absolutely empathize with them because not only are the teams around them being rebuilt, that's having a direct impact on the analytics teams because now there's twice as many marketers that have requests for them. There's twice as many, UX designers that want to run tests that they just don't have the time to do. And what ends up happening is rather than pulling back and thinking about, okay, how can we put processes and things in place to address the needs of the business with the team we have in place. What do? Well, it's a tool problem. We got to buy more tools to manage the queue, to manage the projects. Now we have 12 different tools we're using to manage intake and Gantt charts, and now we're spending all our time trying to it's only amplifying the problems. I get it. Like I empathize with these teams, but we have to resist the urge. And especially if we feel like we're vulnerable to FUD, we have to resist the urge that buying tools is going to solve problems. Tools are necessary, and buying the right tools will take you to levels of amazingness that you've never seen before. But you can't get there until you get all of the other fundamental things in place first to understand what tools you want to buy. I think we've talked about this before using different analogies. Whatever your craft is, until you have a certain level of experience of what works, what doesn't, buying tools is not going to elevate your game. In fact, oftentimes it brings it backwards. There's a small saying in the Tao, something like, trying to handle the master's tools, you get cut. You have no idea what you're doing. You're in a league that you're not ready to play in. Do the work, understand what tools that you can buy to make your craft even more elite, and then look at the master crafts people that you know in your life. Do they have 50 billion tools? Most of them have a few high-end tools where they're going to spend, like, I'm going to spend $300 on a chef's knife. I don't need 50 knives from Walmart that suck. I'm going to buy one knife high end that's going to take my, craft to another level. And that's how analytics teams need to be thinking. We don't have the headspace or ability to have rooms full of martech tools. It's not necessary. We need to understand what we're trying to solve for, put in the work to know what tool is going to be best, and then go out and buy the best tool you can rather than a collection of cheap tools. Buy the best tool you can to solve the problems that you're trying to solve. That makes a huge amount of difference.
Sorry, I was just making a note for something to revisit after this. So, what were we talking about? You're talking about headspace, right? The ability to think and to be able to actually get stuff done. What were we talking about before we started recording? I was telling you kind of like how the week was going, and early to the middle part of the week, like I was just in the wrong frame of mind. because like I
Mm-hmm.
was reaching that point where I couldn't take in another thing. I couldn't think about one more thing. And what did we talk about? We talked about like the need that I have right now to not just say no to stuff, but get better at identifying what needs to be said yes to, because
Simplify your
falling into the
focus down.
pattern. What's that?
Simplify your focus down.
Yeah. So making sure I'm saying yes to the right things,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fear, uncertainty, to out fear porn, all of that disrupts our ability to really see through and make the right choices, because it becomes so scary to say no.
Yeah, and not only scary, but it becomes it's a known path to burnout. Again, these analytics teams are so incredibly small, and rather than taking a step back and being really deliberate in the things that they're trying to do, they're saying yes to everything. Again, the teams around them are growing, so they have more requests. They have vendors coming in and saying, well, you need to go to this, data collection strategy, you need to move to this tool, and so they're saying yes to all of that. Every time you say yes to one of those things, you're adding another ball that you're trying to juggle. It is incredibly tiring. Juggling three is hard enough, but then five, then 10, then 12, it's tiring, and the end is predictable. You're either going to become so tired you can't do it anymore, or most likely the balls are going to start dropping, and you're going to have like a breaking point, a burnout event. And it's, we can put analytics, the health of the company, insights from data, let's put that all aside. As individuals, as humans working in analytics, in data, in marketing technology, saying yes to all of these FUD, fear porn, all of these sales techniques, it is guaranteed path to burnout. And I don't want to see people go down that path. Like, none of what we're doing is so important that you should put your mental and physical health at risk because you're trying to keep all of these balls in the air because you're saying yes to every piece of fear that's being put in front of you by these vendors. If nothing else, look at it as a personal challenge of, no, I can't say yes to this because there's only so many things that I can focus on. This isn't one of them. The fact that you're using fear to try to sell it to me tells me you don't care about me. It's a no, and it's okay. Just practice it. You'll get over the fear really quickly, and it will become a thing where it's not enjoyable to say no, but it's freeing to say no because you're taking your care in your own hands. It's no longer about trying to appease other people, the fear of turning people down. I made a deliberate decision to help support the things that I'm trying to do. And it feels really, really good.
And fear is such a powerful motivator. As I said when we kicked off the conversation, like fear, often like decisions that are made out of fear, they're they're often drastic and they're often wrong.
Yeah.
It's a quick decision like, well, I'd rather make the wrong decision and say yes to it than say no and make the wrong decision that way. And it's actually should be the complete opposite of that.
Yeah, if you're getting pushed into a place of fear, it should be a sign for you to put up a huge stop sign and take a step backwards because most of us, you're right, don't make good decisions in places of fear. And we've talked about it as a company a lot. And sometimes the internal teams will say something like, well, why are we doing this now? We don't need to focus on this now. Well, we're doing it now because I don't want it's an insurance policy of avoiding being in a place of fear in the future because I know that if we don't address this now and it comes up in the future and it's fearful, we're most likely going to make a bad decision. And
Mm-hmm.
so the same is true here when we're buying marketing technology or buying anything, and the sales people are using fear to drive a decision. Chances are you're going to, and that's why I think so many of us, especially when we're making big ticket purchases, have buyer's remorse because we bought into that fear. We get home, those chemicals have drained out of our body, and then all of a sudden we said, "Oh, what the hell did I just do? Like I didn't need that. This isn't the right, selection for me. This isn't the car I really wanted." And we have remorse because we fell into that trap and let the those stress chemicals dictate our decision, and oftentimes those decisions we end up regretting.
Yeah. And it's one of the habits I've tried to build when it comes to being pressured into something is to say, like, if I can't, like, if I'm feeling rushed, if I can't take time to think about it, then the answer's got to be a no.
Yeah,
I
that's
gotta
that's
walk
got to
away.
be the fail safe. The default
Yeah.
state is a no.
Like if I'm being pressured that there is no time to think about this, we just need to do it. Um, that's my cue, and I've gotten really good at it over the last several years. I mean, I still have a problem with saying yes to too much that's not rushed. That's a whole other problem. The problem I'm talking about is like when you're being pressured, like we need to do this today. We need to meet about this today. We need to talk about this today. We need to kick this project off today. We're quickly running out of time. Oh no, this is when we slow down, so we make the right choice.
Yeah, and I mean, the car buying experience is changing, but how many of us have been on a car lot looking at a car, and the salesperson used that tactic. Oh, you like that one? Well, I mean, it's the last one on the lot, and we have this sale, and it's ending in like 2 hours. So should we do it? It's like, whoa, stop. Nope, I'm going somewhere else. Like this is not.
Yeah,
But we've all been hit with that, right? Like the sleazy used car sales approach of, limited time, limited inventory. This is going away. Well, there's another option somewhere. Like we should be so super comfortable saying, okay, that's fine. Oh, there's another option somewhere else. Like you shouldn't get sucked into that, because if salespeople are using that approach, they don't care about you. They're not trying to align some. Again, back to my why aren't we creating good experiences with helping educate buyers on what is best for them? You're creating lifelong customers. You're creating great experiences they're happy about. Again, because they don't care about lifetime value. They care about making the sell today, and they don't give a shit if you come back tomorrow.
yeah, and it's this high pressure, you're going to miss out environment and people falling for it. It's what creates unsustainable analytics programs. It's what
Yeah.
creates unsustainable marketing programs. It creates tools that are in constant need of repair, where you're in a repair state, not a maintenance state. You're in a constant state of repair. Things are breaking
Yeah.
because we rushed to buy it, and we didn't really think through as, if this is a tool need or a people need.
And again, like I think it's human nature, right? Like we whatever the sales and marketing techniques, we only think about the now. Well, I can afford this car. Well, you can afford to buy it, but can you afford to drive it and maintain it? That's a completely different question. And we see people, same with houses. It's like, well, I can afford that mortgage. You can afford the mortgage, but can you afford the utility bills? Can you afford the maintenance? And that's why so many people get in trouble, is they see it as this one-time cost, and they get sucked into the sales and marketing techniques and they buy it. They don't think about the long-term costs involved, and usually, or a lot of times, those situations end poorly. And it's no different from martech.
Yeah.
We get sucked into the sales tactics. We buy something. It's like, oh, we can afford the price tag. Yeah, you can afford the price tag of buying it. Can you afford to maintain and use it? That's a completely separate question you're not asking yourself.
And here's the thing too. There's a cost to maintaining it. But if you think the cost of maintaining something is expensive, try letting it go. Whether it be a house, to your point, or a martech implementation. The cost to repair or even flat out replace.
Yeah.
So like that's even worse. So like if you're buying something and you can't afford the maintenance of it, you absolutely cannot afford the repair cost when it
Yeah.
ultimately fails.
And again, I think going back to your question, like, how do we see through this? Like, we should be more comfortable asking questions of sales and marketers to help educate us on the process. Hey, I see that you're trying to sell me this platform for $100,000. You work in this space. Like, what is it going to take to actually run it and maintain it? How many people do we need? What are the maintenance costs going to look like? What are your clients doing that are using this 3-4 years down the road that are really successful? And if they're unable or unwilling to answer those type of questions, back to your example, well, what's the ROI? But if they're uncomfortable answering those type of questions, you have your answer. Like, this is a person, this is a company that doesn't care about our long-term success. Our default answer should be an immediate no. We need to get much better at putting up the stop sign, walking away from fear, and asking questions to become informed. And if we see any red flags in that process, it should be an easy no to walk away. regardless of how sexy the solution looks, right? Right. Regardless of how much fear they're putting in, like if we don't do this, it's going to be 3 times as expensive tomorrow.
No,
Who
it's not.
cares? Walk away. Walk away. Center yourself. Have the discussion. Can we afford this? Can we maintain this? Is this something we even need? And then make an informed buy decision.
Yeah. And also too, like when it comes to fear, um, our minds take us to the worst case scenario, which in most cases does
Doesn't
not happen.
happen. Yeah.
So that fear of it's going to be more expensive tomorrow, or you may not be able to get onboarded fast enough because our onboarding queue is quickly filling up. No, it's not. You'll be fine.
Yep. Yep. And again, I think just knowing, again, the most important thing is to just admit that this happens and that we're susceptible to it. If we can't admit that, we can't fix anything.
Yeah.
But after that, finding a sales partner, a marketing partner that truly wants to help make you better, not just today, but long term, that's where our focus should be. Like we should start rewarding those. Like today, we're rewarding the sleazy tactics. That's why we get hit up by so many of them because it's obviously working for them, and so they're gonna keep doing it. We should put up a stop sign and say no. We're gonna stop rewarding it. We're gonna push back. We're gonna say we don't want to be sold to this way. We don't want to be treated this way. This is the experience that we want. The decision has to lie with us whether we're going to change the way that we're sold and marketed to. We can't just complain about it. We have to put action behind it and say, I don't want to be sold to this way. And get comfortable saying that.
Agreed. So let's wrap it up there for this week. I know at times it feels like we're bashing sales, and to a degree we are. I'm not going to lie and say we're not, but it's not that I'm bashing sales. It's I want to call out some of the tactics that I see, some of the bullshit tactics that lead to major problems that sales does not have to clean up. How many times I've come into a broken implementation because tools were oversold, things were simplified too much, or people made rush decisions to get something and kind of get it up haphazardly, and I'm part of the cleanup crew.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And again, like our goal isn't to bash sales. Our goal is to highlight a better way to do it and ultimately look at this as we need partners. We need true partners that want to have a meaningful relationship. Just think about sales partners that you've had in your life, whether professional or personal, that truly care about your long-term success. It is a joy to work with them. They are part of your team. And right now, so many of it's not seen as a team game. We're not partners. You're trying to trick me into something. We need to start talking about and rewarding partners, whether it's sales, marketing, or otherwise, that truly care about our long-term success. Like that's going to fundamentally change the game.
Agreed. Cool. So let's wrap it up there. It's been a fun conversation. And by the way, I always love using the term fear porn because I think it really
that's gonna click some content
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? Like it also creates an image on kind of like
Yeah.
How it impacts the brain. So,
Yeah.
But
For sure.
cool.
All
Great
right.
chatting with you, and we'll talk to everybody later.
See ya.
See ya.